I had thought that the most nerve-wracking thing I'd be doing this morning would be learning from the Torah. However, as I stand here to paraphrase Oscar Wilde, it strikes me that not to have Rabbi Alexandra or Rabbi Igor give the sermon may be considered to be a misfortune, but to have me in this place looks like carelessness. It is, of course, an honor to be here, representing our class, and also a huge responsibility. As I started to assemble my thoughts for this sermon, those twin concepts of honor and responsibility seemed particularly resonant. Our course was called Continuing Our Jewish Journey. We spoke about being more open, learning from each other, and the importance of creating different ideas from a text, holding the authority of the text and the panoply of interpretations that it holds. We also valued the freedom to ask, what does a text mean? One of us said, the process is like weaving. You are taking a source, the text, and weaving yourself into it. It's yours and ours together. Bahar Bechukotai is one of 7 designated Torah portions that, depending on the number of Shabbatot in a year, is either read as 2 separate portions or combined to ensure that the reading of the entire Torah can be completed in a year. Lisa has spoken about some of the themes in Bahar. I wanted to focus a bit more on Bechukotai. It's mostly about the blessings that will come to the people if they obey God's commandments, and a horrendous series of disasters that will befall them if they don't. It can be read as a classic catalogue of reward and punishment, but the first word of this Torah portion is im, if, a classic recognition of the existence of choice. The word if has a fine tradition in our secular culture. There's Rudyard Kipling's famous poem, If. There's my preferred version of that, which is playwright and author Jean Kerr's If You Can Keep Your Head When Those About You Are Losing Theirs, It's Just Possible You Haven't Grasped the Situation. There's the seminal 1968 film, If, directed by Lindsay Anderson, which is about morality and mayhem in the British public school system, providing background in respect of some relatively recent British Prime and other ministers that you may or may not think is relevant. No less iconic, but a bit more recent, the closing lines from Angela Gorman's The Hill We Climb, which she read in 2021 at the inauguration of Joe Biden's presidency. The new dawn blooms as we free it, for there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. Plus, of course, William Shakespeare, with Shylock's, if you prick us, do we not bleed? If you tickle us, do we not laugh? If you poison us, do we not die? And if you wrong us, shall we not revenge? If we are like you in the rest, we will resemble you in that. But some of those are classic cause and effect. Is something a bit more complex happening in Bechukotai? I don't think it is a black and white kind of disciplinary agreement. The first sentence seems to me to make that clear. If you walk in my statutes and keep my commandments and do them. What do those 3 different concepts mean? I think they embody 3 elements: our relationship with God, the relationship between how we behave and the well-being of our planet, and the extent to which our covenantal relationship with God is dependent on our behavior, in particular, the morality of our behavior. With regard to our relationship with God, the Torah Women's Commentary suggests that Bechukotai is an indication from God that human action is intrinsic and essential to the proper functioning of the cosmos. The idea that collective human effort in partnership with God can help to mend our broken world seems to me to be critically important. Is the reward and punishment aspect of Bechukotai a classic cause and effect discourse? Why does the worst outcomes have the best lines? The curses are much longer. The trees do not yield their fruit, nor the land its produce, skies like iron, earth like copper. I will loose wild beasts against you, and they shall bereave you of your children, says God. Truly horrendous. It's not entirely surprising we don't read them in the synagogue, I don't think. But according to Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, the reason the curses are so dramatic is not because God seeks to punish, but the precise opposite. The curses were meant as a warning. They were intended to deter, scare, discourage. They're like a parent warning a young child not to play with electricity. The parent may deliberately intend to scare the child, but he does so out of love. He or she does so out of love, not severity. On the relationship between how we behave and the well-being of our planet, Cantor David Fair from the Union of Reformed Judaism in the USA, I did some of my research for this last week when I was in the USA, reminds us that apart from the idea of the 7th year lying fallow and the 50th Jubilee year and the agricultural brilliance of that concept, as Lisa's mentioned, in Leviticus chapter 25, verse 23, God says clearly, "The land is mine, for ye are strangers and settlers with me." So we're stewards, not owners. As the Native Americans have it, we have not inherited the earth from our ancestors, we are borrowing it from our grandchildren. So, how are we doing at stewarding our planet? Not brilliantly. There's desertification, deforestation, climate change. Professor Anthony Costello at UCL has a slide showing what happens if there's 1 meter level of sea rise in Bangladesh, which is far from unlikely. The lower third of the country disappears. Bangladesh is the 8th most populous country in the world. By way of comparison, I think the UK is 21st. It is, as Professor Costello says, the end of geography in Bangladesh. We also, as you may have read, have polar bears coming into urban areas because the sea ice they need to survive is melting. But according to friends I had lunch with last week, we don't need to go to Alaska. Brown bears in Bethesda, a suburb of Washington, D.C., have been sighted going through people's compost. Thirdly, our covenantal relationship with God being about our behavior, and in particular, the morality of our behavior. Even at the reward and punishment level, it's clear that choices have consequences. Yet, confounding this is an astonishing moment of hope, which ends this catalogue of curses. God says in Leviticus chapter 26, verses 44 to 45, even as the people have rejected his rules and spurned his laws, yet, in spite of this, when they are in the land of their enemies, I will not reject them or abhor them, so as to destroy them completely, breaking my covenant with them. I am the Eternal One, their God. To return to Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, he says, the choice, God is saying, is in your hands. You are free to do what you choose, but actions have consequences. You cannot overeat and take no exercise and at the same time stay healthy. You cannot act selfishly and win the respect of other people. You cannot allow injustices to prevail and sustain a cohesive society. You cannot let rulers use power for their own ends without destroying the basis of a free and gracious social order. There's nothing mystical about these ideas. They're eminently intelligible. But they are also, says Rabbi Sacks, and inescapably moral. The first verse of Bahar starts, "And the Eternal One spoke unto Moses on Mount Sinai." And the last verse of Bechukotai ends, "These are the commandments which the Eternal One commanded Moses for the Israelite people on Mount Sinai." Cantor David Berger, also from URJ, in a commentary noted that, according to Rashi, every divine commandment was spoken to Moses came from Sinai. Rambam said that, but also noticed that things happened after that moment, that there's a sequence to things, and that what was important was the connection with Sinai. It seems to me that the still small voice that's sometimes in our heads telling us to do what's right and just is us standing at Sinai. Every time we ask ourselves if there's a right choice to make at any given moment, it seems to me that we're responding to the if choice posed by Bechukotai. Some of us have a curious relationship with YouTube. Every so often, I need to hear Betty Davis say, "What a dump." Or more often, "Fasten your seatbelts, it's going to be a bumpy night." Earlier this week, I needed a burst of Lauren Bacall in the iconic film To Have and Have Not, saying, You know how to whistle, don't you? The best definition of partnership and this covenantal relationship with God that I've seen in a while occurs in the same scene, but a bit earlier. It's when Lauren Bacall says to Humphrey Bogart, "It's even better when you help." I think that's what God is saying to us in Bechukotai. Here is planet Earth. It's not bad, but it could be better if you make choices that enable you to help with the task of making it better. As one book, Leviticus, closes and another opens, may we all continue to study our heritage in this place, in this space, inspired by our texts, our teachers, Rabbi Igor, of course, but for co-stewarding the continuation of the Jewish journey of our class, Dov Softy. I'd like to give a nod in the direction of my teacher, Ed Teager, for helping me to narrow the gap between my Hebrew aspirations and abilities. And of course, to our senior rabbi and Liberal Judaism president, Rabbi Alexandra Wright, whom, on behalf of the whole class, I would like to thank for stewarding our course with such care, clarity, and commitment, sharing, like all good teachers, not only your knowledge of, but also your love for our heritage and our text. And finally, as well as our texts and our teachers, inspired by our tradition, learning from our past and standing on the shoulders of our forebears to create together the future of progressive Judaism in this country. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.